Whisper to save us all. If everyone's quiet, best to keep it shut. Turn off your radios, send no signal to the sky, up there, because there are only two possible states in the cosmos, silent or dead. These pieces of information, as strange as they sound to our ears, are part of the plausible explanations for why. When we scan the sky in search of intelligent extraterrestrial civilizations, you've noticed, we hear nothing. Therefore, the question arises as to why the sky remains silent, why no signal has ever been received, why have we never encountered extraterrestrials? While today we estimate there are several 100 billion planets orbiting stars other than our own, there are several tens of millions. The number of these worlds that could host life on the surface, and often nearly 100,000. The number of extraterrestrial civilizations that could exist there, now, and that in our only galaxy. To try to explain this strangeness, we generally call on the Fermi paradox and all its solutions. Hypotheses attempt to explain this great silence. Some assume that the emergence of life forms is extremely rare for various reasons. And in that case, advanced extraterrestrial civilizations simply do not exist. We are practically alone in our galaxy. We fail to accurately estimate the number of other civilizations. Other hypotheses still try to explain this great silence, while a large proportion of these billions of worlds do end up seeing forms of life emerge on the surface. By the fact that, inevitably, on all these planets, terrible bottlenecks come, during the great history of life. Prevent the emergence of complex and therefore infinite forms of life, of extraterrestrial civilizations. I'm not going to dwell on these terrible obstacles, as I will make a complete episode on this hypothesis, as it is disturbing. On the same level as the one we are going to dive into today, and which is, in my opinion, one of the most frightening solutions to the Fermi paradox. A solution that proposes to explain the deep reason for this great silence by the fact that other civilizations can only be silent or dead. Let's unfold the reasoning. This hypothesis suggests that many extraterrestrial civilizations exist in the galaxy, but we don't detect their presence. Because none of them wish or are able to communicate with us. And for a very good and terrible reason. A matter of survival. And this is where it's going to start getting scary. Because our galaxy, the Milky Way, could well be populated with thousands of civilizations who, in their vast majority, would also like us. To know if others exist, but all are listening and none are speaking or transmitting. And there, you tell yourself that yes, 100,000 inhabited planets keeping silent, it's like 100,000 people staying at home, stolen, closed. That never happens. Except that we listen, and it would only take one other civilization wanting to communicate. Damn, there's no one else for the great silence to become a slight murmur. So I ask you again, why don't we pick up any radio waves or any other type of signals coming from up there? To explain that this desire to remain discreet is shared by all extraterrestrials. We can imagine several hypotheses. The most credible and the most disturbing is that of the Superpredator. Who's to say that if no one is talking, it's because it exists in the cosmos? A superpredator, imperialist, or belligerent civilization, against which it is better to stay hidden in the shadows. Thus, this silence would be totally voluntary. Once they reach the technical capacity to listen and communicate, each advanced civilization, observing, like us, that we hear nothing, would come to the conclusion that it is better, as a precaution, not to attract attention, and would therefore decide not to open it, not out of modesty, but for fear of revealing its presence. Each new arrival on the grand cosmic stage interpreting this silence as the presence of a potential threat. The lack of signals may indicate that those who revealed themselves in the past have suffered severe consequences. Thus, all civilizations that have tried to communicate before others, and therefore revealed their presence, would have been wiped out by a predatory civilization, who, having colonized a large part of space, listens to everything that happens there, and preventively eliminates any other form of intelligence, perceived as a form of competition, a threat. Thus, this interstellar silence could well be the sound produced by a graveyard of civilization whose gravedigger would be one of the oldest of all, and who, strong in its antiquity and especially its technological lead, would ensure to keep it. Shh. If everyone listens and no one speaks, it's because breaking the silence, it's potentially taking the risk of getting crushed. and in a reasonable vicious circle, rather than sending ships to explore the cosmos in search of others, to bombard space. With a firework of signals, all civilizations copy each other out of precaution and add their voice to the deafening cosmic silence. All except us. Because you will not have missed it. Humanity, for its part, has been deliberately or inadvertently sending radio signals into the cosmos in all directions for several decades now. Ah, the geniuses. And this is where it gets funny. Because if the Superpredator Hypothesis is correct, then we are behaving pretty much the same way. Like a bunch of cosmic sheep, bleeding at the top of their lungs and naively revealing their exact location in a cosmic forest they know nothing about. Of dangers potentially filled with lurking wolves. I logically repeat, if no one dares to speak, it's better to shut up. But humanity does what it wants and could well lose its head. In fact, you will be happy to learn that assuming the existence of extraterrestrials with bad intentions, they could both be dangerous to emit, but also to listen. Because an extraterrestrial intelligence with a detailed knowledge of our software systems, as well as the architecture of our computers, could well be able to send us information which, once read, could turn out to be terrible computer viruses. Viruses capable of plunging us straight into certain death, a bite. And yet, even if the nature of the response could well displease us, we speak and lend an ear. I must say I really like the idea of us arriving with our big clogs. We may be on the verge of allowing other hypothetical extraterrestrial civilizations, who keep silent and are more cautious and thoughtful than us, to definitively decide in favor or not of the Superpredator Hypothesis. On one hand, if we are about to be vaporized, then everyone who witnessed our disappearance will be clear about the nature of the danger. And on the other hand, if our cosmic racket provokes no hostile reaction, perhaps our naivety will prove to others that there is nothing to fear in space, and one can speak without being invaded or shot down. This great silence being the result of a precautionary principle that has no reason to exist. Except that we can also very well consider that if we have not yet been annihilated. While we've been sending signals into space for several decades, it's simply that our signal has not yet reached them. Or their unpleasant response is on its way. Traveling at the speed of light, it won't be long before it arrives. There's even the slightly vexing possibility that we're not yet developed enough to merit their deadly interest. Indeed, this superpredator civilization might very well have a doctrine of only annihilating other intelligent species once they have reached a stage of development considered potentially problematic or competitive for them. Finally, one can also easily imagine that, concerned with conserving their resources, these hypothetical world destroyers always wait, at first, to see if the civilizations in their sights will not destroy themselves without anyone's intervention. When you think about it, why waste resources to exterminate emerging civilizations that, by squandering their own through the genius of their mistakes, can disappear on their own? You will have noted that we seem to be shooting ourselves in the foot. But what if, by chance, we continue our development until one day we master techniques that allow us to overcome the terrible distances that separate the stars? Then, perhaps, once the insects alias us have taken flight, the superpredators will come to crush us. Are the others deliberately silent or dead? For now, the question cannot be settled. But, as the astronomer Carl Sagan said, this ocean of silence also questions the type of voice we would like to receive. And in considering the Fermi paradox, Sagan suggested that there might be an interstellar selection process, which would mean that, in the long run, only species that are pacifist, friendly, and benevolent by nature or culture would be able, one day of arrival, to conquer the stars. Arguing that deeply aggressive or warlike civilizations would, over long periods of time, be too unstable and would all invariably dig their own grave on their planet. In which case, this interstellar silence would be the sound of a symmetry of failures, collapse, and war, the Great Silence, a bird of ill omen that would have the merit of showing us the direction to take in order to hope to last in space and time. With that, I'll leave you. I have stellar systems to go explore.
I think you're overdoing it a bit.
The power of imagination. I just realized something very funny. Imagine if we broadcast this video into space. By the greatest chance, this becomes the first sign picked up by the hyperpredator. That wouldn't be funny at all.